Now it's time for this morning's papers. Of course, there is only one person who could do that. Barrister extraordinaire Andrew Eborn. Good morning.
Good morning. Lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you.
Both of you.
You look very smart.
Well, thank you. I thought I'd dress up because it's the Magic Circle convention this weekend, you see.
And of course you are a magician.
I remember I was celebrating David BERGLAS, the international man of mystery. It's his 97th birthday,
Really?
can you believe? Yeah,
Can you do a few tricks now?
I will disappear.
Can you not make him
Thank you. Yes, well, being a barrister, I can also produce my next witness. You see, all of these things.
Very good.
Thank you. We're here all week.
How did you get into magic?
A friend of mine was a magician at university, and rather than washing dishes in Italian restaurants, I went around the Northern Club circuit, and I did a bit of comedy and speaking and magic and that sort of stuff. So that's what
How brilliant. So I was obsessed with magic when I was growing up, and in fact I got a magic set and I learned lots of things, you know, particularly the cups and the, you know, where you
do
move
it very well,
it.
by the way.
Yeah, well, I don't think I can do it anymore, but all that kind of stuff and sleights of hand, I was absolutely obsessed.
I was very good. Well, King Charles is a member of the Magic Circle.
Oh!
And isn't that glorious?
Is he?
Yes, and Penny Mordaunt, you know, she was a magician's assistant and all that sort of stuff. We have all sorts of glorious connections with the world of entertainment and things like
brilliant.
that.
That's really brilliant.
I had a feeling that Mike Colin was a member of the Magic Circle.
Oh, is that
Really?
right? Okay.
So when I lived in the States, I always wanted to go to the Magic Castle, which is up in Hollywood.
Yeah, you should do that. No,
one day.
Well, we'll all go together. We'll have a little day out.
Why not?
Broadcasting
I'm sorry to bring you back down to earth.
Oh, yes,
Shall we go through the papers?
Let's do that. Well, all the stories are talking about ULEZ and net zero, and they're sort of saying don't abandon clean air policies and so on and so forth. And they're saying the poll boost for Starmer as Sunak backtracks on net zero. But a lot of people, I'm sure most of your brilliant audience will turn around and say, actually, this might be one of those silver bullets for the Conservatives, because if the car can save the Conservatives at the ballot box was one of the suggestions. So whilst Sadiq has won his battle, and there's a glorious cartoon about that as well, you know, ULEZ, there he is with the judge, he won his judgment, but obviously Rishi...
I'm still amazed.
Well, this is what happens, but he's got the right to do that at the moment. So will it then turn around at the ballot box?
The thing is, there are two things here. Firstly, they can't backtrack on these commitments because they've written them into law. That's actually the problem with this. They might want to.
But wasn't it about him overextending his powers and whether he was actually able to do that for ULEZ?
Khan, yes, definitely. But then Rishi came out and realised that it was a ballot winner and said that he was going to row back. But
he
he's
can't.
Not going
no,
to.
You're right. It's enshrined in law. Absolutely.
And Sadiq, even his own impact assessment, as I said earlier, says that it will make no difference to air policy.
And that's the problem. And you have these debates, and the trouble is, like most of the world at the moment, we've all become experts. We're experts on the Constitution, or virologists during the pandemic. And what we need is more light, less heat, every pun intended, because you need to get the facts and figures. And if it really doesn't make a difference, I mean, people talk about carbon. We need carbon, obviously, to survive, and life works on it. If you look throughout history, there's been massive heat spikes and cold periods and so on and so forth.
There are nurses who start work at 8 o'clock in the evening and finish at 8 o'clock in the morning that will pay congestion charge and ULEZ on the way into work and congestion
on the way
charge.
back.
It isn't worth them
I know,
working.
and actually, that's a very interesting point about where we go from here in terms of the rollout of things like ULEZ, because I do think, actually, the Conservative Party may well have actually realised what could win them the election. And what we've seen in Uxbridge, obviously, is the fight against ULEZ. The fact is that people are very unhappy about that. And actually, now we're seeing, politically, the Conservative Party thinking, well, maybe we don't want to go this far, this fast. And actually, I think this is going to be increasingly interesting. In the mayoral election, you've got people like, for example, in other parties actually saying that this is one of the most defining moments. I think you might be right. I think that actually, if the Conservative Party play this right, they can use it to their advantage.
Absolutely. And it's horrendous because it's also not just the motorist who's suffering. It's also the shops because people won't come in and so on and so forth. So you have to work out, are we charging this because it's a green agenda, or are we charging this because we want to make extra money in the same way as you have parking fines and so on and so forth?
But you see, it doesn't change the green agenda, because the fact is the scrappage scheme is terrible. You get £2,000. If you live outside the M25, you get no help whatsoever, and yet you may have to cross into it to take your child to school, for example, or maybe you go to a care home or you do something and you get clobbered.
So carers who currently earn less than £10 an hour when everything is taken into account, there's no point in them working. We already have a crisis, and I think we're going to come on to this.
Yeah.
We have a crisis in care anyway.
Yeah.
This is just going to hit the people who are the poorest and make no difference to the air quality.
And I'd be amazed if anybody at home listening at the moment turns in and says, this is a great idea. I've yet to hear anybody say that.
I mean, it's extraordinary. Jenny Jones had a real go at me, actually. She told me it was the hottest day in 120,000 years.
Because the scientists told her.
Because the scientists. And I said, well, actually, the fact is the science isn't settled, and we've got groups of scientists. And she said, oh, it's only one or two. No, it isn't, actually. It's thousands of scientists.
And that's the problem. They regurgitate the same missive. And I always try and keep an open mind about these things. I like to talk to experts and surround yourself, drown yourself in information, and then you can make an informed decision.
The problem is, Andrew, is that experts are scared to speak if they're not speaking the narrative that's wanted, because they get cancelled and they get shouted at. And this is our new way of debate.
Yeah.
When you're not talking the narrative that people want, they'll just cancel you.
Or shout.
By shouting at you.
I mean, in that interview, and it was really extraordinary, and we got a lot of traction here on Talk TV about it. Anything I put forward to her, it was derided.
She rolled her eyes at you.
Rolled her eyes at me. She put her head in her hands because I was stupid. All I was doing was saying, how do you know this? And your point is valid. The world has always warmed and cooled.
Absolutely.
We know the climate changes. Yeah. It's always changed.
I took part in another TV debate on exactly that. We had two people on both sides. They say, look, the question is, to what extent has humanity contributed? Yes. And both sides agree that we have contributed.
We have.
The question is quantum and what we do about it. And if what we do about it will make a difference. But it's no good people just getting angry with you and actually quite rude to you when seeing that interview. You turned on that sort of basis. What we need to do is have an intelligent conversation and make that happen. ULEZ, however, is not just about that. I think it's all about raising money. I think it could be
surveillance.
Absolutely. Well, surveillance, data is the new currency. If you don't pay for a service, then you are the product. That worked on that sort of basis. So already there's enough information about everybody, how you shop, what you do, what you look at online.
Yeah, but
all those sort of things.
This is going to morph into pay per mile.
Of course it is.
That's what it's going to morph into.
Yes, of course it is.
So, he hates cars and he wants to pay per mile.
Yeah, but that's all right for him, isn't it? Because he gets driven around. Because he has people to drive him.
In diesel cars?
In diesel cars. Don't start me on Sadiq Khan. Don't start me on him. Let's move on to your second story now.
Yeah.
This is Bulger Mum furious at sick.
I have to say, whilst I'm a great advocate, as you know, about AI and the massive opportunities, it can also be used for awful things as well. And this was a horrible story on the front page of the Mirror about this poor boy who was murdered, you might recall.
Jamie.
Exactly, Jamie Bulger. And what happened is they've now done, on TikTok, there's some people have created basically a reproduction of Jamie, and what's happened is he's talking about his murder. Effectively, it is a horrendous story. It shows what can be done in a very, very thing. And obviously, the mother is distraught at hearing her son talk about it. So it's a shocking, shocking story.
So how dare anyone do that?
Well, David, isn't your reaction actually what should be at the crux of this? And doesn't it open up another conversation at some other point about society and what we have become? Because all of us sitting in this room are so horrified at this. None of us would sit down behind a desk and say, oh, I know what would be a good idea. Yeah. Let's do this. Because we actually have some morals and some standards. Yeah. But I worry that morals and standards of what we're losing in society, and it's leading to this.
So it is extraordinary. These are part of a series of videos, according to this, showing fake versions of missing or murdered kids, including Madeleine McCann, Baby P, Reece Jones and so on. They've been viewed tens of thousands of times. As you say, what person in their right mind, where are the morals, where are the standards? Also, what are we going to do about this sort of stuff?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. But it's all about, understand what the technology does, and you can replicate all sorts of videos. Fake videos, there's fake porn, you're putting all sorts of stars and so on and so forth in that sort of situation.
But if you think that children are the biggest users of TikTok, so this is glorifying violence against other children,
and it's awful.
Children.
And you're quite right, Renee. What happens is then other people get inspired to do that. Who else can we have a go at?
So how do we stop this?
Well, I think you have to basically make sure that the law is in place about regulations and taste and decency. What you don't do is stop AI.
But this is multinational.
No, and that's the problem. So you need a whole buy-in. We're going to have an AI summit. Hopefully here, Rishi, is one of his great plans is to do that in October. And Netflix have just advertised for an AI producer, paying $900,000 and so on and so forth. What we need to do is start out recognise what AI can do, which can do this. It can do fake videos, it can replicate, it can replace actors and so on and so forth.
Hence
That's why
the
you've got
strike.
that, hence the strike. But also, like a fork, it can be used for good and bad. You can eat your spaghetti or you can stab somebody in the back. This is being used for bad.
But also, surely this should be taken down immediately.
Absolutely. So you need the platforms to buy in on that sort of basis. But
just the scale of this. If you've got so many TikTokers, how many people will you need to go through every single TikTok?
We have just been through a period in our lives where, at certain points, if anyone on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter mentioned the word COVID or vaccine, got taken down, a strap was put across it.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
But we can't stop this.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. And you're absolutely right. And AI can actually help with the takedowns. I think that's the way you should do it. But what's happening now is a lot of people are talking about end-to-end encryption, which means that the platforms themselves would not be able to see the content.
No, people don't want to take this down. The problem is that people in power don't want to take this down because I don't know why, David.
Well, it's generating
but there is a very interesting film coming out called Sound of Freedom that we should all watch as well, about children and missing children. If they can take down COVID posts within 3 seconds,
I agree.
They can take this down.
Actually, we'll talk about that later. The fact is also Nick Clegg, you know, as part of Meta, actually said he was deeply worried about the fact that Facebook was taking down posts about COVID when people said this is man-made.
And even Renée's post about Sound of Freedom, you were worried that was being restricted.
That's been suppressed. I tweeted this week about Sound of Freedom is a film we should all watch and be worried about.
Disappeared,
and no, it's not disappeared, but it's been suppressed.
Something weird is going on in the metaverse.
In the algorithm.
Let's move on now. Something we talk about a great deal, of course, the crisis in the NHS. Of course, we have more strikes upon us.
Absolutely.
The junior doctors holding out for 35% pay rise. What's this story about?
So this is about the virtual NHS wards for 10,000 patients. So the idea is, rather than being carted off to hospital where it may not be the best thing, they're talking about looking at things. Well, it might be. They're talking about to what extent could we do this remotely? Put people in their home where they seem to prefer to be, and they can monitor them. So from September, 10,000 basically people will be viewed remotely as patients, and then the doctors will be able to monitor them and so on and so forth. My question is, if there's an emergency and somebody say, well, hang about, we need to get there quickly, how do they do that?
So this is the holy grail, and lots of people are looking at telemetry, which is what this is about, looking at your vital signs, monitoring you know, have you got a temperature, what's your blood pressure, pulse, so on and so on. The thing is, it goes some way, I suppose, so you can see their ECG, you can see their heart tracing, you can see certain things. But also, it doesn't get away from the fact that you don't have human contact. If you're on your own, that, I think, is a real problem. Also, you're medicalising you being at home. There are lots of issues in this.
There's so many issues. And, you know, you're also relying on people to not take off the monitors and to log into the system. People that might be confused because they're getting an infection, for example. You know, I think that virtual walls have a place. I do. You'll be pleased to know, Andrew.
Thank you.
But I don't think it's the be-all and end-all. And I think it needs to be used really in limited ways, not to replace carers.
I would agree. Let's pay carers more. Let's actually train British carers. This all goes back to a bigger picture.
Or maybe use it as part of the mix. So in the right cases, it might be appropriate. But you're absolutely, and as always, both of you make a lot of sense, and I agree with both of you. But the reality is there may be a place for it. Let's look at it, but make sure there's safeguards.
They're already using it.
They are. They're already. But I mean, so for example, if you have an aberrant heart rhythm and you have some sort of ablation where they get rid of the pathway, you could then monitor them remotely and see whether their trace is normal, and that would be the sort of place.
Use it as part of the mix, I think, is the answer.
Social care time bomb. Again, this links back to, this is the elephant in the room, right?
It has to be, apart from me. I have an elephant in the room. But I'm losing weight, it's going to be good. What happens is this, you work throughout your life, coffee is good. You work throughout your life, you pay your taxes, and if you fit in the middle, if you're very poor or very rich, you're sort of cared for, you're okay. You're very rich, you pay for yourself, you're fine. You're very poor, well, they look after you. You're in that middle ground, which is the majority, I would say. What you have to do is basically all this money you've been paying tax on and working really hard to achieve counts for nothing, because they want to drain it all away before you work on that sort of basis. That is wrong. What happens in several countries, like the brilliant Japan, love Japan, they have a system where it doesn't matter. We're blind and deaf to whatever your money is, we're going to look after you. That has to be right.
So this is the thing. If you are prudent and you save money and you buy your house and you do all the things that you're meant to do, you are then the enemy, and the state takes everything from you.
Crazy.
And what message does that send out?
It's the same with inheritance tax, isn't it? We spoke about this It has to be changed.
I actually gave a talk in the week about care and how much we pay our care workers.
Oh, yes, how was that?
It was very good. And there was
I'm sorry I couldn't come.
That's okay. There was a very interesting report from the TUC that's just come out where they looked at the mathematics of having a minimum wage for carers of £15 an hour.
And?
It rejuvenates the economy.
Yeah.
It actually attracts more people into care, and we have a massive gaping hole in care. It looks after patients better.
Yeah.
It's almost a no-brainer.
Doesn't it also reinforce the social structure thing? So if you pay them more, they're seen to have a higher social status, and that then is really important to recruit people.
Especially as Sadiq will be taking it away in ULEZ.
Well, he won't. I mean, it will be. You watch, it will disappear. I predict that's going to happen. I think so. I'd be very interested to hear the audience reaction. It is not a vote winner. Nobody's going to say, let's get ULEZ. Put ULEZ in
well,
there.
his view is once it comes in next month, that actually people will find out that they won't pay that much because the majority, their figures say 90% of cars are actually not going to.
And it's weird what the cut-off is.
That's still 1 in 10 are.
It's 1 in 10 are. But he says that actually when people realise it's not an issue, it will disappear. But I agree with you. I think there will be political pressure.
There will be political pressure. And people will use it. It's a political hot potato, and it's not really about the environment at all. As I say, it's a different issue. But in any event, social care, we do need to address this. We need to look after our ageing population. People are getting a lot older. The one thing we can do, we should respect them and should work on that.
So we'll talk about this later as well. Mick Jagger, 80. He looks pretty good for 80.
Amazing. David BERGLAS, 97.
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
Amazing.
So the thing is, we also need to start re-looking at the definition of being old.
Yes.
Growing old disgracefully.
I thank you, God.
Growing old disgracefully. I mean, I'm all in favour. I'm doing it as we speak, growing old disgracefully. Right, let's talk about Threads, because this is another social media platform. It's not doing so well.
Well, and what's happened, they've lost what they're saying. They've lost about half their people. So they had 100 million sign up incredibly quickly. There was a little recording, which was that Threads is unravelling extraordinary. And they're sort of saying that people are not engaging in the way that they were hoping that they would engage. The idea for all these things, and it's the same week that bizarrely they had Twitter changed into X, marks the spots, you know, so you can contact all your exes. I mean, it's rubbish, isn't it? But it didn't on mobiles. It's still Twitter on mobiles, bizarrely. But they're saying that actually it's not working in the way that people hoped it would work. So people are not engaging with Threads.
I could have told them that.
Well, but the principle is right. I'll tell you what the principle is the principle is you get all of your things in one space, as they do in China. They have WeChat in China.
No,
it's one app.
We don't want to be like China.
Well, it depends on what... We're already like China, but we don't talk about it. So the whole thing about identity and protecting your privacy and so on and so forth is already a big problem. As I say, data is the new currency.
But why
You're
do
giving
we
so
want
much
it
away.
all in one place? That's a monopoly.
Well, it's a monopoly, but it's also convenience. And people sacrifice so much
You're
to have that
giving away
convenience.
all your personal details to one platform that then controls you.
But you'll be surprised how much they already know about you, and this is what happens.
This is the argument to help people go into it. We do not want what China have, and that's where we're going. We're going to a social credit system a la China. Oh, you might want it. I don't want it.
I don't want it.
But the trouble is both Threads and now X marking the spot. That's what they want to do. And Elon Musk, when he bought for 44 billion, he made it very clear he wants this super app where you have the convenience of sort of turning around and saying, OK, it's all in one space. I've got everything here. Work on that sort of basis.
I mean, I think the thing is, it's also, for me, it's just too pedestrian Threads. You can't post political content and things like that. So I've read it and I thought, I
didn't even download it.
Already. Very quickly, if we may.
Yes.
So it's Christmas in 5 minutes.
Well, hey, isn't that exciting? And guess what?
Wasn't summer wonderful?
Summer was great. I loved it.
We loved it. And
Really
then we had the pink dinosaur. They're talking about the success.
Oh, Barney.
Barney and Barbie. And also they're talking about Furby. Do you remember Furby?
I do remember Furby.
What was Furby? A little furry thing?
Yeah.
But it was kind of living, wasn't it?
And they sort of moved a little bit and that sort of stuff. And I can tell you as well, I predict, they haven't mentioned this in the article, but AI toys are going to be massive. Massive, this sort of thing.
What are they going to do?
Well, and this is the worrying thing. They're going to take all your data and they're going to repeat things back to you. And they're going to become your best buddies
Alice
ever.
has a little man called Alan the Alien.
There you go.
And whatever she says, he repeats back to her. Right. But she gets very frustrated that he's got a time frame of what he listens to. So if she wants to say something long to him, he starts talking back at her in the middle.
Alan the Alien.
Alan the Alien. I love it. We should talk about UFOs. So it is, but do be careful because it's all about data. Make sure that you very, very cautious about AI toys because what they're doing is they're gathering things. They relate to you in a certain way, so they will remember the stories.
I mean,
And
But it's the same with things like Alexa sitting there silently listening, listening.
I don't have Alexa.
Well, I mean, it is extraordinary, and I tell you these tales, you know, where they prompt things, prompt advertising. I think my mum won't mind me sharing this. She had this conversation with a friend of hers. They were talking about something racy, I think, and the next thing she knew, she got an advert popped up.
Oh, that's what they do.
It's really weird. So I got a paddling pool for Alice, a big one that had a filter, and Colin hadn't seen it. He came home, he picked up a filter, looked at it and said, have you got spares of these? That's all he said.
Yes.
And on his phone, in the next second, were that very filter spare.
No, absolutely. And that's what is going to happen more and more on that sort of basis. So, but nostalgia, that's the big thing. Nostalgia ain't what it used to be, but that's what we're going to get for Christmas. All these old retro toys, all the stuff we used to remember in our childhood, they're all coming back.
But this time they'll have a chip in them.
Well, that chip on their shoulder and elsewhere.
I want a purple dinosaur. That's all I'm saying. I want a purple dinosaur.
And surprise when I give it to you.
Yes, exactly. Andrew, thank you very much.
Pleasure to see you both. Thank you very much indeed.
Great work indeed, Andrew Eborn there. Time for a break. After the break, it's all the sporting headlines. This is Talk TV.